Yo, what is up, everyone? Today we are back with part 2 of What If Ichigo Accepted Zangetsu Early. Pretty much, this is just Ichigo getting his Zanpakuto early, like way earlier, like years earlier, and then him training with other people to master his Zanpakuto in a better way. But this is more like Ichigo using his, his first Bankai as like a Shikai in a sense, and then using his other abilities like Horn of Salvation and his Quincy powers and his other hollow powers like Cero, Pesquisa, Blood Fiend, which is obviously not a hollow power, but I'm just saying all the abilities he can use. But without further ado, guys, sit back, relax, and enjoy.
Bring that heat, boy.
Alright, so we start this what if right after Ichigo saves Rukia from Fishbone D, the kind of normal hollow which she slays, and then they proceed to fight Gillians, which due to just Ichigo's rising pressure, the Gillians would want to eat Ichigo or kill Ichigo, so they can absorb him and they can evolve up to Adhukas, and then pretty much go from there to Vastalorde. So it was the day right after Ichigo, like I said, saved Rukia. Obviously, Rukia would still stay in his closet, which kind of weirded me out, but I was like, what the fuck? And then pretty much Rukia would start to explain to Ichigo what Soul Society is, with Ichigo this time not really insulting her drawings, as then he would explain, is there some ruling power that rules over all these Shinigami? As Rukia would then explain what the 13 court guard squad guard. Oh my god, the 13 goats, captains and the lieutenants, and pretty much they order the lower Shinigamis to do missions, and some of them even go on missions themselves. Then she explains how there's a head captain being Genryusai Shikagunki Yamamoto, being the strongest Shinigami in all of Soul Society, almost being seen as the god of Soul Society itself. As she would explain that he had a fire type Zanpakuto, which pretty much there was rumors that when the Quincy's invaded, or pretty much there was another race called the Quincy's, and when they invaded 1,000 years ago, Yamamoto used his Bankai, as Ichigo would be like, what the fuck is a Bankai? What the fuck is a Shikai? Obviously, he kind of knows what it is, but he didn't know what the name of it is. He hasn't really attained Shikai nor Bankai. He's just strong in his base form, which is kind of unbelievable, but yeah. As obviously Rukia would then explain what Shikai and Bankai is, saying that she only has Shikai and has some abilities with it, and saying that Bankai comes with more abilities, and it's a 5 times multiplier. It goes from 5 times to 10 times. As Ichigo would start to learn more on the history of Soul Society, they would then look up. They realized Ichigo had completely skipped the day of school. So, he would just kind of chill with Rukia the rest of the day as they would start the training. They would head over to Urahara's shop as they would kind of do a spar with Ichigo, facing off against Shikai Rukia. As Rukia would then use Tsunegamai Tsukishiro. I think that's one of her abilities. I may be wrong though. But pretty much what it does is it forms an iceberg from under Ichigo's feet. Obviously, as we saw in the Zanpakuto Rebellion arc, pretty much Sodeno Shiryuki can form it from wherever she wishes, but Rukia didn't really master that yet, so she can only form it from the ground. As Ichigo would then see the circle under him start to form, as he would then pretty much jump out the way, as he would then see multiple of these zones form under him, as he realizes this is where the ice starts to spawn, and the only way to defeat Rukia is to attack her head on. So he would then pretty much put his finger into the chain of his Suba, as he would start spinning it, as then he would then swing down. A Getsuga escaping from his blade, as he would start to slice through all of the icebergs before then going for Rukia. Rukia, would be under the impression, or at least would look like she was under the impression that she was gonna lose. But suddenly she would then raise her sword in a sort of 90-degree angle, as then she would then say Sunegamai, as then she would stab the ground 4 times before then saying Hakuren. A horizontal iceberg would escape from a blade, clashing with the Getsuga, causing a sort of interesting clash, as the landscape around them would kind of change. When Ichigo's side, obviously you'd see the waves of Getsuga, but on Rukia's side there'd be more snow falling from the sky. It was sort of some symbolism, as Ichigo would start to lower his horn, as he would go into his Horn of Salvation mode, as he would then, put his head down before then forming a Sero. After this, he would then swing his blade down, as he would then go his blade in Getsuga, as then he would then use a Getsuga Sero, pretty much merging the Getsuga Tensho and the Sero together to make, obviously, the Getsuga Sero. As you know, Ichigo used the Getsuga Grand Ray Sero on Yuhabach, so it's really easy for him to use the Getsuga Sero. It would be just weaker form of that. And once the attack would go for Rukia remembered Aikido that she had learned from her lieutenant and captain, Kain Shiba and Jushiro Ukutake. This being Bakudo number 81. As Rukia would start to make 2 layers of it, as she realizes this attack was mixing a Sero and one of Ichigo's Shinigami-based abilities, as she realized not one Danku was going to save her. So she would then form 2 shields of the Bakudo 81 Kido technique, as the technique would hit it, shattering the first one, but stopping at the second one, as she was then defended from the technique. But this is what Ichigo wanted. The smoke around them, obviously they're kind of in a desert terrain, so the dust clouds would start to form, as Ichigo would use this to his advantage, as he would then appear behind Rukia. Rukia would then turn around to go stab at him, but Ichigo would then suddenly throw his cloak over his head, as Rukia couldn't see him, so she just had to stab through it to guess where he is. She would then do this, as Ichigo suddenly just wasn't there. He would then appear behind her, as then he would hold his sword to her neck, telling her that she lost. As then she would then say, "But did I?" As she would then, obviously, there would be Rukia, and suddenly there would be just her piece of clothing from her cloak, as then her sword would be at his neck, as she had just used the hidden Hoho number 3 Utsusemi, which is a technique made by Yoruichi Shihoen, and it pretty much replaces you, sort of like a substitution jutsu, but instead of it being like a log, it's a piece of clothing. You have to sacrifice a piece of clothing and you can move anywhere. It's like a speed technique, not really like a substitution technique. As Ichigo would put his hands up, as he would, concede the match. Obviously, he could have easily beaten her, but, he's gonna let her have that one. Because if Rukia did go for the slash, his Hyaru would defend him because he has more Ryatsu than her. So, after the spar, pretty much Ichigo would question her if she was planning on getting her Bankai, as Rukia starts to think about it. She had her Shikai for over 50 years, and she could technically get Bankai. She could materialize Soden or Shiryuki for maybe in an hour, and it was definitely in her power, as Ichigo would then say, well, if you're ever gonna get Bankai, I'm gonna be getting Bankai right there, like beside you in a sense. As Rukia would then say, do you even have Shikai? As Ichigo would then say, no, not really. As Rukia would start to ponder, she was wondering if Ichigo was that strong, then if he get that 5 times multiplier from his Shikai, then he would be even stronger, possibly on the level of captains. And if he were to get his Bankai, he'd be on the level of Yamamoto. As then, she would be taken out of her thoughts by Urahara. Urahara would then tell Ichigo if he was ready to get his Shikai. As Shikai, why did I say Shikai? As Ichigo would nod his head, as he would then get into the Jinzen position. As once he would get into his inner world, he'd be looking over, but something weird would happen. You'd see two people rather than the usual person he always saw. You saw Tensa Zangetsu, but he looked like he had like black hair this time, and his kimono or his outfit, the Bankai outfit, was black. Usually it was bleached out. But he would then look over to his right. This is when he would see the person who looked like Tensa Zangetsu with the bleached out outfit, but something was weird. He had the Horn of Salvation on his face, but it wasn't just like the normal one that Tensa Zangetsu had. It was completely different. This Horn of Salvation being the one Ichigo uses against Yuha. As then we would see Zangetsu, White Zangetsu to be more specific. As Ichigo would then point his finger at the man, as he would then ask Tensa Zangetsu who this is. As Ichigo would then be answered saying that that was Zangetsu, and he was simply a Quincy representation of his powers, and he had already mastered, or at least got in touch with some of his hollow abilities, but now he desired his Shikai, right? As Ichigo nodded his head, as suddenly, honestly, White and Tensa Zangetsu would start to merge together, as then, once they would merge together, they would walk up to Ichigo, as suddenly they would stab him through the chest. As Ichigo would look down at the blade, he was kind of confused at first. First, he was kind of shocked by how he was stabbed, but then another thing came to his mind. How come he didn't feel any pain? Usually, if you get stabbed through the chest, you're supposed to feel at least some pain. So Ichigo would question him, how come I don't feel any pain through my chest since you just stabbed me? Zangetsu would answer saying, if you accept my blade, then you can never, be hurt by your own self. You can't be hurt by yourself. It's obviously me being a representation of your power, I can never truly hurt you. As then he would then, release his hand on the blade, as he would then say, the secrets lied inside the blade. Now use it. And this blade would be none other than an Asuchi. Specifically 2 Asuchis. Obviously it'd just be one, but you can do whatever with the Asuchi, so whenever you awaken a Zanpakuto, from there. As Ichigo would then pretty much close his eyes, as suddenly he'd wake up in the real world. He would then get an explosion of blue Ryatsu, as in the distance there was an ocean, sort of like a water. As suddenly it would evaporate, as most of the desert terrains would kind of catch on fire from Ichigo's pure reishi escaping from his body. Suddenly 2 blades would form into his hands. This being the white blade, being his main blade he uses, and the Quincy blade. This being the true Zanpakuto that he had in chapter 542. As Urahara would walk up to Ichigo saying, congratulations, Kurosaki. Seems you really did awaken your Zanpakuto. I'm quite proud now. Shall we spar now? As he would then say, maybe I'll even have to use Bankai, but we'll see if you even get there. As pretty much what would happen is now we'll do the battle between Ichigo and Urahara. As maybe I'll even have Urahara use his Bankai. It'll be kind of exciting, but we'll see. So pretty much now we'll be going over that. So Ichigo would then get the bandages around his blades, as he would then, put them on his back, as he would get the new outfit, the same outfit that Senjumaru gave him. That shit is just a drip. Bro, Ichigo rocking the turban. Is it the turban? I think it's called the turban. He's rocking the turban better than the last Sasuke and Rukia and Byakuya put together. Like, damn. Like, he's looking mad fine. On God. But pretty much what happened is he would then, step into the middle of the desert terrain after the fire is extinguished and the water is then placed back after he pretty much evaporated it. As Ichigo would stand off against Urahara, he would then unsheath his blade, as Urahara would then unsheath his cane, going to Shikai, saying, "Waken, Benihime." As his blade would morph into the usual sword we know and love, as he would then slice down, he would then say, "Cry, Benihime," as a red beam of light would escape from his blade, as he would then tell Ichigo this attack travels faster than the speed of light. As Ichigo was a little nervous at first, as Urahara would tell him that he can go way faster than that. As obviously going into Bankai, it's a 10 times multiplier, so that's like MFTL speeds at that point. But pretty much Ichigo would then, gain his, pretty much go into Shikai, as suddenly a horn would start to manifest on his head. He would then start to, kind of put his swords together in a cross beam type, like cross, like his Quincy blade vertical and his normal blade horizontal. As then he would swing his blade, as he would then use the Getsuga Jujusho, as there would be a cross beam of Getsuga, as it would clash with the attack of Urahara, as it would make an explosion, covering the radius, about like a 250 meter radius of the terrain, as everything in that radius would kind of either make craters or be atomized at the molecular level. As after the explosion, Ichigo would then be seen with a few ash marks on his body, and Urahara would have, I guess, a few cuts and bruises over his body from being hit by the Getsuga. His attack only nullified some of the attack, but he couldn't stop all of it. As Ichigo would then lower his head down, he would then pretty much charge up a Sero, as the Sero would then start to turn green, as he would then say, Sero oscuras. As Urahara would see this, the Sero would start warping time and space itself, as Urahara would then make a Bakudo 81 before then using his scream Benihime, making a shield out of Benihime, as he would prepare for the attack, as it would be sent towards Urahara. Urahara would then pretty much make about 7 other Bakudo 81s and then merge them together, as the Bakudo 81 wouldn't just be that normal transparent shield. It would transcend into that of one of Hachi's barriers, as the technique would hit the barrier, as there would be an explosion. Once the explosion would dissipate, Urahara would then be seen with almost no marks on his body, as Ichigo was kind of breathing deeply from using the Sero. As Ichigo would then appear in front of, Urahara, as then he would slice down. Suddenly, he would almost look like he was about to use a Getsuga, as Urahara was looking to defend, and that's when Ichigo placed Urahara off. He would then cancel the technique, use a technique that Rukia had used against him, Hidden Ho-Ho number 3, Utsusemi, as then he would then switch places with his cloak, as then he would appear behind Urahara and slash him in the back, as then Urahara would then be sent flying into the rock, as Urahara would then whine about how, not whine, but it was in a comical manner about how Ichigo pretty much used a dirty move of using Kuroichi's technique like that, as Ichigo would kind of be confused, as he would then say, who the fuck is Yoruichi? As Urahara would then say, you use her technique and not even know the person who created it? Kinda funny, but I'll tell you after this fight. As Urahara would then say, I think it's time. I know I'm not supposed to be killing you here, but if you do lose, I'll simply just reconstruct you. As Ichigo would then say, reconstruct me? What do you mean by that? And before he can even finish his sentence, Urahara would then say, Bankai. As obviously, I fucking can't remember the name of his Bankai. I think it's, every time I try to remember Urahara's Bankai, I think of Shunsui's Bankai. Like Katen Kyotsu, Karamatsu Shinji. You know what? I'm just gonna search. Alright, boys. I had taken a quick search at the Bleach Wiki, and I had found it. So Urahara proceeds to say, Bankai. Kanen Biraki Benihime Aratame. As pretty much there would be stitches over his eyes, stitches like all over his arm, as obviously the hole through his back, like his shirt, would rip, as obviously the stitch would go over there as it would start to heal. Urahara would then say, this is the power of my Bankai. In this radius, I can reconstruct anything. So Ichigo would then say, in the radius, huh? That's pretty easy. As Ichigo would then back up, as pretty far away, as then he would swing his sword down, creating a Getsuga, as then he'd shoot it towards Urahara. Urahara would then reconstruct the attack, so it's almost like an atom, it doesn't do anything, but this is what Ichigo wanted. Ichigo would then appear behind Urahara and slice down at him, slicing open his back, as then he would slice down like back vertically, as then it would cut open his back yet again, causing like a cross beam of like cross vertical and horizontal wound on his chest, as then he would back up again before then using Utsusemi to then kind of replace himself with his a piece of his clothing yet again. As suddenly a beam of red light would pierce his shoulder. Suddenly the Urahara he had been fighting would pop. As Ichigo was confused, he was like, what did he even use? As Urahara would then tell him how this is a portable Gigai. As Ichigo was kind of embarrassed how he got one-upped by Gigai. As then his body would be surrounded by a kind of blue lining on his his shoulder where he was hit, as he would then use Blood Vein. As then he would then pretty much make he would then desummon his swords, as then he would make an arrow. He would then shoot about maybe 7 arrows, 7 quilge, and I can't even remember what the basic arrows are called, but he would then shoot the arrows at him, as then he would make about 5 of them, as this would make like a zone, as then he would then summon his sword again, as then he would stab it into the ground, as he would then use Zealous Schneider, as then suddenly a zone of Ryatsu would encompass Urahara, as he would start to burn up inside and obviously be hit by the radius of the technique. After the technique would be let down, Ichigo wouldn't even let up. He'd hold the sword at Urahara's neck, telling him if he didn't deactivate the Bankai, he'd surely take his head off, with no way of processing or even comprehending a way to reconstruct his way out of this. Urahara would then laugh a bit before he would then deactivate his Bankai after healing himself, and then he'd shake Ichigo's hand, congratulating him on his fight, telling him that he's quite one strong kid, and if he actually trained his Shikai and got his Bankai, he'd be able to beat everyone in Soul Society, including this one person I want you to beat. As Ichigo would then be told about Aizen and his plan to pretty much take over the Soul King, something that Ichigo has the power of doing, but certainly if Aizen were to become the Soul King, then it wouldn't be an interesting predicament. As Ichigo would kind of see Aizen as sort of, how do I say this, I guess you can say a competition for being Soul King and all. As pretty much what would happen next is Ichigo would spend the next few days training. Let's just quickly go over all the filler arcs. I don't even want to go over this. It's just painfully horrible. But pretty much what would happen is when it came to the day when Rukia was taken back, and Ichigo had gotten quite close to Rukia and Chad, and more close to Uryu and Tatsuki, more of his school friends, Ichigo was called by Urahara. Urahara would pretty much distract Ichigo, as he knows, Byakuya and Renji are here to arrest Rukia. As he knows if Ichigo ever went back outside, he would completely slaughter them, and then that would end his plan of getting the Hokyoku away from Aizen. As then pretty much Ichigo would then be distracted by Urahara, by training, as then he would meet Hiroichi, as then he would kind of chill with the Vizards. Well, then that's when he heard it. Suddenly Uryu would then Uryu's Reishi would start to spike, and Ichigo would feel this. Obviously this is the type of Ryatsu buildup that only Quincy's give off when they're trying to call their other Quincy's, and Ichigo felt this. When Ichigo went over there, he then saw Byakuya and Renji walking away as the Senkaimon door closed, as Rukia was there, as she was clearly being arrested. As Ichigo then looked down at Uryu, and this guy, I feel bad. Byakuya saw, basically Byakuya saw Quincy. He wasn't playing around. So pretty much Uryu fought Renji. He slammed Renji. If you don't know, Renji has his Shikai, he doesn't have his Bankai. Obviously, Renji also kind of takes L's, so when it came to this with Uryu and his Volstaggen, and Renji with only his Shikai, you know how that's gonna go. But when it came to Byakuya had to go into his Shikai, and he had to use Senka. That's like a RIP for Uryu, and obviously right after he slashed him, he used Blood Vein, but Blood Vein really is just a way to secure the skin around your body. as obviously he would then make that call to Ichigo, as Byakuya and Renji would then arrest Rukia, and then Ichigo would get there, seeing the faces of Byakuya and Renji, knowing that he's probably gonna go and end them one day, or at least fight them and then like beat them and fight, something like that. So then he would walk up to Ryu before then, going to the stab wound in his chest and his soul link in his soul sleep, as then he would start to tap it. As he would transfer Reishi over to him, as Quincy's sort of had this ability to transfer Reishi from each other, as he would heal the wound. After this, him and Uri would head over to the Urahara shop, telling Urahara that Rukia had been arrested by Soul Society for some reason. As Ichigo didn't really get his powers from Rukia, but the reason why Rukia was arrested was overstayed her mission, pretty much almost like abandoning the mission, and also rumors of her working with Urahara, who was at that point exiled, and also with the Vizards, who were said to be executed, or they have like a warrant for them to be executed. So that kind of led to her arrest, with Aizen killing all of Central 46, and then sending the mission out for Ichigo and Byakuya and Renji to arrest Rukia. Pretty much, boys, that'll be the end of this What If, or part 2 of What If Ichigo accepted Zangetsu early. Part 3 will be going over Ichigo saving Rukia, and then we'll even be going over Ichigo trading with the Vizards before Okura and Yami pull up, and then Ichigo, let's just say that's gonna be interesting. Without further ado, guys, I hope you guys have a good night or day, but without further ado, guys, peace out.